This is what the workbench looks like when you're building something. Here I'm working on the input tuning circuit for the Heathkit SB-220. Some detailed work getting all these capacitors in here just right. Parts, more parts. The book. Ignore the glasses, those are just for super close up. Lighting is important. And then more parts, lots more parts. And then the original boxes, lots more parts. All sorted out and wire. Here's the front panel. Front panel is basically assembled. So the front panel wired up, and then the chassis over here. Next thing I gotta do is get the input tune board in. Tube sockets. So it's coming together. It's taking some time, but I'm trying to do it super nice and neat. And it just takes lots of time, the detailed work, like the getting all the capacitors in here nicely, and little extra details like the Teflon tubing around all the leads. So my little cheat sheet, doing the Richard Measures AG6K input tuning modification with the capacitors. So I got to map out what the original capacitors were and what the new capacitors are, and make sure I get them in the right location on the right side of the Pi network, in and out. So I marked everything with, on pin 1, blue marker, and pin or connection 1, and all the coils, so I don't get them messed up. I did make a mistake on 1 or 2 and had to redo them. Luckily I caught it right away, but the assembly manual isn't real forgiving for trying to incorporate some modifications and updates. They just say connect this lead to this pin. They don't tell you if that's 10 meters or 15 meters or which or what, or if that's in or out. So I had to map it all out using schematics, and if the manual says use a 220, that's really going to be mapped out to a 360 picofarad. If they say 180, I'm actually going to use a 270. And I already modified all the coils to remove the right amount of turns as per what Richard Measures had suggested and what he measured for a proper Q of 2, and get the input impedance better matched for the input tuning. So it continues. A little update where I'm at with the amp build. So I have the RF deck and chassis, which I'm making good progress on. Tube sockets are done. Power switches are done. Really happy with how the tube sockets came out. A couple modifications I did. One, grids are grounded. Two, rather than taking the RF input through the 0.01 bypass cap directly to the cathode pin and relying on just this one 0.02 to tie the two cathodes together. I'm feeding it, just moved it over to the center of the filament lead here, and then put 0.02s across each side. I know it doesn't matter at this frequency, but if this was UHF, it would matter because of time delay and you'd have a phase difference. Doesn't matter at this frequency, but still, I felt this was better. It took me a couple hours to get the filament choke mounted just right to where it's level, even, parallel. The little solid wire twisty things they have you make in the manual to connect the leads. I'll show you, I'll turn this thing around here to get those centered to make the leads end up. So it's, you can see from the edge of the amplifier, the coil, the choke is level, even, and viewed from the top, parallel to the sockets. It took some time to get that in there. And also, see if we can get the focus. I don't like to over solder things. So I take pride in my solder work. So the sockets came out very nice. Very happy with that. Some other little modifications. I'm going to tie the shield. I put a little lug nut, ground lug, on the SB-239s themselves. Because I'm going to connect the coax center and shield. Keep it coaxial as long as possible to keep the impedance as consistent as possible versus having the little loop that loops over the coax here than having just exposed center conductor all the way over. Not going to use ALC. And let's see. We're going to do some interesting things over here with the King circuit. Not King circuit, but the relay. And I'm not going to mount right here. There's a little board that is supposed to fit right here. So you can select between 120 and 240 volts. That's not going to be there. Instead, I'm going to have, sorry, let me go over here. We're going to have a little step start board that's going to sit right about there. Right about here, somewhere in there. And connected directly to the circuit breakers. This amp's going to be wired for 240 only. It's not going to be capable of running 120, partially because, oops, let me fix that. These transformers are going in it. And here I got some, there's a cap, the high voltage caps, King circuit, meter board, everything ready to go in. One thing I'm doing is all the hardware on this thing is all stainless steel. Even all the self-tapping screws, all stainless steel. So let's flip this back over, show you what I did over the last 2 days that took entirely too much time. So this is the input tuning board, and I spent entirely too much time getting all the micas all lined nicely, properly wired up. Used Teflon sleeve on all the leads, and then I'm using some RG316 input and output, and I kept it coaxial all the way to the switch, and then used little copper standoffs to tie the shield to ground on both sides. I like that better. Does it really matter at this frequency? Well, a little bit. So just got this all mounted. Had to, even though this amp is new in the box, it's 48 years old, and I had some tarnish on all the silver contacts, so I had to spend some time getting the tarnish off. which for RF doesn't really matter, but when you try to solder the connections on it, makes it a little more difficult. So about ready to mount this here on the chassis. I just thought I would give a little update where I stand. I'll try to include some detailed photos of the how I put the slugs together with all the mica caps. Spent way too much time doing that. Something interesting, this is a late model. The tube date code on the tubes is November 77, so this is a 78 model, which they only made the 220 to 78. And the part number for the manual, the last digits, the -14 here, is revision 14. And I was building this, and I got to a part. Let me move the chassis off a little bit. I got to a part where, let me move this page. In assembly, where I was building the input tuning circuit, and we go from page 14 and 15, and all of a sudden, so we get through 16 and 17, and all of a sudden I get to a part where they expect you to have the second wafer, or this is what triggered me, this coupler and phenolic shaft installed. But I could not. I went back through the page and read every instruction 3 or 4 times. Could not find that in here anywhere. Like, what did I miss? Well, I downloaded a newer version manual, -17 version, and turns out this version of the manual is missing this page, this entire page. This is page 15. That's page 15. They are not the same. So this is the page that was missing. So I found this page and went and found where they have you install the second wafer, the phenolic shaft, the coupler. So I knew, I got there and I was like, whoa, hold on a second. Something's missing. So glad I found that, because if I would have continued and ignored it, it would have made it much more difficult to get those parts installed. And that's this wafer and coupler. So that's where I'm at. I will continue. Updates will follow.